WVTC Radio Detroit. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, our website, www.wvtcradio.com, or download our WVTC app from the Play Store for Android users and the App Store for iPhone users. Thank you for tuning to WVTC Radio Detroit and the Community Bell Show with your host, former Wayne County Commissioner, Edna Bell. Stay tuned for insightful information Detroiters will find valuable. Text a friend and tell them to watch with you for news you can use. And now, your host, Edna Bell.
You better ask somebody. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. How are you out there in radio, TV, um, all the electronic lands of information? It's your host, Edna Bell, again this Monday at 4 o'clock here with the Community Bell Show. We are so glad to have you here at WVTC, Winning Victories Through Christ. It's a pleasure to have you with us this afternoon. And it isn't snowing today. Not as sunny as it was last week, but that's okay. It isn't snowing and it isn't raining as much. We've got a wonderful guest today. You're just going to be as excited as I am to hear him talk about all sorts of wonderful things that he does in the community, information that you have to have. With me today is a Mr. We're going to call him Mr. Talbert.
I have all the titles.
Mr. Dennis Talbert, friend of Mr. Was it Phil Talbert? I'm sorry, brother of Mr. Phil Talbert. And we're trying to figure out if he is possibly my brother or cousin or something. Because my maiden name is most of you know.
In some way, form, or fashion.
Maiden name is Talbert, so we never know. But we're going to figure that out. Thank you so much for being with us, Dennis. I'm so excited to have you.
It's exciting to be on WVTC, a Christian gospel network here and operating out of the Detroit area.
Isn't that wonderful?
What a joy it is to be with you and finally get an opportunity to spend some time with you.
Yes, yes, thank you so much. Oh no, not really.
You're legend.
Oh my, legend. Are legends alive or
legends
dead?
Are alive.
Okay. So legends live. Okay, living legend. Okay, I'll take that.
You're a living legend.
I'll take that. I am so excited to have you. And I thought about this a few weeks ago, and I talked to, Carlita Carr, who's a friend who works with you guys. And I said, Carlita, I know the Adopted Child program is coming. It would be wonderful to have someone on to talk about it because sometimes people don't know. And what they don't know. We're going to help them know about this. And it's been going on a long time. I was introduced.
59 years.
Isn't that incredible?
This is the 59th year
incredible.
Of the Adopted Child program.
Incredible. And I found out through it. Well, first of all, through Dolores Bennett, of course, and then my brother, who was very close friends with you and Dolores, and then he got me involved in it, and so it's just been going on and on. And interesting enough, now my daughter is involved in it, so it's a generational thing. It's just,
and that's really the legacy of the Adopted Child program. We now have we now have third generation of recipients who are giving back.
Isn't that incredible?
Who are adopted parents. So 59 years ago, Dolores Bennett started this program, and she started it out of her home, really by accident. It was not something that she was seeking to do. A young lady came to her front door, who was her neighbor, and she had been struggling financially, and she asked Mrs. Bennett, did she have anything that she could give her kids, that she could give to her kids for Christmas? And so Mrs. Bennett says, I must have something around here. And she went down and had some things that she could give, and she brought some other things to the young lady who lived around the corner from her. About a week or two later, a week or two after that, this was after Christmas, she came to Mrs. Bennett front door and just crying to her, and she said, you saved my life. She says, because I had been contemplating killing my children and committing murder and killing myself because I didn't have anything to give my kids. And so Mrs. Bennett on that day made a decision that no child, no parent should be put in a position to even think about murdering their children because they could not fulfill the Christmas wish of her children.
Oh my gosh.
So that's how Adopted Child began 59 years ago, and it has continued. There's never been a day or year when the has not fulfilled the needs of the kids, and we've grown.
Oh boy, have we grown!
We've grown.
We filled TPC Center, formerly the Cobo Hall.
Right.
We filled the TPC Center now.
TCF.
TCF.
Okay,
yeah, TCF
Center.
The new center.
The old Cobo Hall. And it has just been amazing. I heard a story, if you don't mind, I'll tell this story really quick.
Do.
I heard a story last week from one of Mrs. Bennett's closest friends of how we ended up at TCF or Cobo Hall. Said Coleman Young was coming down Woodward Avenue, and he saw lines of kids in the wintertime outside. And he had no idea what was going on. for the event. And so he had his driver to stop, go inside. What's going on in
Now,
here?
where was that? Was that at the Considine
There's a
Center?
Considine Recreation
and
Center.
see, I knew that only because I went to Northern High School.
Right. Same here.
And that
So
was
big, you know?
they're big, you know. And that was the recreation center right next to block down that we used.
And right around the corner from
Yeah.
Mrs. Bennett.
Yes.
And he came in and said, what's going on in here? And when she told him, he said, get these kids out of the cold. And so then he arranged for them to get, and the church was not Holly's church at the time.
Exactly.
He arranged for them to get into the church, which is an all-white church. He had them to open up that church so that the kids could get in there. And the next year, he said, Dolores, you're coming to Cobo. And so Mrs. Bennett said, I don't have money for Cobo. And he made it free. And from that day to this day, Cobo Hall, now TCF Center, has been free to Mrs. Bennett's program, Adopt a Child.
Wow. Isn't that quite incredible?
It is incredible.
You know?
And I think about, I can't think of another, I've been around a long time, and I can't think of another community-based program that is 59 years of consistent service.
I can't think of any other.
It speaks to the love, dedication of Dolores Bennett, who is a legend.
Yes, she
was a
is.
saint.
She absolutely is, and she just and she did that program from her heart.
From her house
From
and her heart.
Her house and her heart.
Right.
And everybody knew that Dolores called you and said, I need you to take a child.
There's no
okay.
Right,
the answer was okay.
right. You know, and because she lived it.
Yes.
You know, and you know, since I've been more actively involved. My brother was involved way back when, but the last 10 years I've been more actively involved at a leadership level, and just listen to Mrs. Bennett tell the stories about this person and that person. Some have gone on to be very famous. You know, very famous. And she said, well, they weren't always famous. And but then to hear her tell about, you know, there's so many stories, you know, for instance, Mrs. Bennett is responsible for the first methadone clinic in the city of Detroit, because the kids of the North End were hooked on crack. And she went to Herman Keither one day by herself, went from floor to floor, said there must be something in this building. You say you're a hospital, a public health hospital. There must be something in this building to help these kids who are crack addicts. And her last stop was an African whom I don't know his name. And he said, well, I may have something. And she told him to write it up. And the next day she went back, picked up the 1 or 2 page written document, drove downtown, went to see Coleman Young without an appointment.
Well, she could go and see anybody without an appointment.
And they told her, well, you know, he's in the meeting. She said, well, you tell him, come on out. And he read the proposal. He says, Dolores, I have $75,000. Do what you can with it. And there is the first drug treatment program in the city of Detroit. And this story just goes on and on and on. I was trying to get her before she went to be with the Lord to write a book, because she told me about drug gang intervention that she did in her basement.
Wow.
She would bring the gangs in her basement and say, okay, we're not going to kill anybody in this community. But she was just a straight saint.
She really was, and would not take no for an answer. If she decided that something was the right thing to do, she was going to do it come hell or high water, and you were going to help her do it.
Right. So my last story, because
I don't want to do stories. I want you to give me lots of stories. That's why you're here. We want to talk about Dolores and Dr. Child.
How I actually got involved, I was a marketing person for for Burger King.
Okay.
I was also for KFC also, but this was a Burger King story. And she contacted me because she wanted to feed the kids and could not afford, because they have catering services. So I approached the corporation about feeding the kids, and now we don't have stores in downtown Detroit.
that's
So
right.
we had to have stores, we had to cook the stuff in all the stores all across metropolitan Detroit, including the suburbs, and get 5,000 burgers
Downtown.
downtown before they got cold.
Oh boy. How did you accomplish that?
And listen, those owners, they made it happen.
Wow.
Those owners made it happen. And speaking of Coleman Young again, and for some that were in the suburbs, Coleman said, oh no, not Coleman, Lucas was the sheriff.
Okay.
Lucas sent Wayne County sheriffs to escort the sandwiches, the chicken
Oh my
sandwich and
gosh.
burgers down there so they would not be cold when they got to the children. And it was that kind of, we were going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, you know.
That is just...
But it only happens because Dolores Bennett said, this is what I want to happen.
Oh my gosh.
And nobody's going to say no.
No, you never said no. You never said no to Dolores
Right,
Bennett.
right.
I remember so well when Barack Obama was running for president, and I was chairing the Women for Obama group for Detroit, and she called me once. She said, "I need some T-shirts, baby." I said, "Okay, Dolores, how many T-shirts do you need?" Well, how many you got? I said, well, I'll just bring you some. And she said, and how much are they? I said, well, we'll figure it out. She said, well, good, because I don't have any money. So, okay. So I got as many T-shirts as I could and took them over there.
And really, that's the crisis that we have today, because as the adopted child program, we don't have the Mrs. Bennett to pick up the phone and call Talbert or whoever happened to be living at the time and say, hey, I need some money. And they would just say, okay, well, how much do you need? And just cut the check.
Yes,
Because
yes.
Dolores Bennett, and she would then say, I'm on my way to get it. One of the crises that we have today is we don't have Coleman Young, so we don't pay for Cobo, but we pay for everything else that goes attached to Coleman. We pay $8 for the tablecloths, and we pay this.
Lord.
We have thousands. We have 3,000 tables. So $8 a table. That's a very expensive event. So we are out raising money even as we speak. I have this outfit on today because I have to go collect money.
Okay, everybody, do you hear what he's saying? We need some money for these babies.
Right, these babies. You go to the NEYIC.com website and contribute any amount of money, as Mrs. Bennett would say, $5. If that's all you have, put it on the table. But we are raising money. The event will take place.
Yes.
But it's getting tighter and tighter and tighter. In fact, we even, this is something that happened today. We had to say to a school, the Levy, we're in Southfield, the Levy Middle School, they had to pay for their own buses because we could not afford the bus transportation for their kids to come down and perform for our babies.
Wow.
So it's getting tighter and tighter, but we have a committee that's led by Mary Bennett, Mrs. Bennett's daughter. We're just determined to make it happen. Regardless of what it takes from us or what it takes from everyone. So, even as we speak, there are little elves out shopping and there are other little elves out collecting money.
Yes. When is the event?
The event is Friday, December 6th at Cobo, or now TCF. It is a private event, meaning that the general public cannot attend unless you have an invitation. And we do that, but this is just speaking of the era that we are in, that in the past, folks have known that we're going to be at Cobo, and they show up and they steal the gifts from the children. So we have had to put security out, and we now only allow the invited guests, which are the adopted parents, the committee, and the children and their families. And even within the framework of their families, we know every single name that's coming, because it has been that kind of deal. Or they take the gifts from the parents, because most of our parents don't have cars, and so they have the kids dragging their gifts, and so the transit center is a good
place.
mile away from Cobo,
Mm-hmm.
and so the kids are dragging the gifts, and they'll snatch the gifts. They've snatched the gifts. So we have our own little detail of private citizens, Detroit 300, who are patrolling downtown to make sure our kids get to the transit systems centers
Heartbreaking
safely.
that we are in an
These are
age
the
where
things that we have to do. So the air, the air has changed
It
a
has
bit, but
drastically changed.
it has drastically changed. But we are committed to make sure that our children have the best Christmas that they possibly can have.
And that's the bottom line. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and finish talking about the Adopt a Child program and Dolores Bennett. And we're going to hear some more stories from Dennis. I'm sure you have lots of them, but we'll be back with you in just a moment. Stay tuned with us to the Community Bells Show here on WVTC Detroit. We look forward to seeing you back with us in just about a minute or two.
It's like you're looking through a telescope. You see where you're gonna be. Growing, getting better. You're not the person they see. Can't be mad at the things you've been through, 'cause they built your muscle. Now you're stronger than you've ever been. They can't stop your hustle. Your faith ain't never small. That's what brought you this far. Yeah. See, you got your dreams and you got your prayers and you got your God. He gon' take you there. See, everybody has a season, and I believe this one's yours. 'Cause you've been working, waiting. This what you've been praying for. Go get your blessing. Go get it. It's your time. It's your time. It's your time. You were made to live a good life, and that's what I believe. So hit the floor, say a prayer, start working. You gotta do something. It's alright to crawl before you walk. It's alright to walk before you run. But if you wanna get what you never got, gotta do something that you never start. Go get your blessing. Go get your blessing. It's your time. It's your time. You've been qualified. His mercy multiplied. You cannot be denied. 'Cause you're fully certified. It's official. Go ahead and testify. He's gonna bless you. You gon' bless him. Now God be glorified. When you go get your blessing. Go get your it's your time. It's your time. It's your time. It's your time. Go get that blessing. Go get your blessing. Time. It's your time. It's your time. It's your time. Go get it.
We're back with our special guests here today on the Community Bells Show on WVTC Radio Detroit, Mr. Dennis Talbert with Adopt a Child program, and he's going to tell us now how you can be a part of this program, because you just can't walk down to Cobo Hall. I want to make sure you know that. If your name isn't already on the list, you can't get on there today, okay?
Right. That's not gonna happen.
That doesn't happen. However, Dennis is going to tell us how you get there.
Right. So for program participants, we serve children that are 12 years old and under. That's number one. and that's from 0 to 12, I should say, because if the baby is born and they could be 2 months, we would serve them. And we do a summer registration. We do one at Bennett Park. We do one at, this is what happens when age gets you. Hooks was the pastor.
It's Reverend Hooks. New Mama Raya.
New Mama Raya, thank you.
Yes, New Mama,
Greater
New
New
Mama
Mama Raya.
Raya.
We do one Greater New Mama Raya. We do them throughout the area, and that is in the summer. We do a joint venture with the NAACP when they do their backpack distributions in the beginning of the fall. And then we spend the rest of the time just making sure that the parents really do qualify as underserved. Following that, around October, we start inviting those parents to a event where they actually formally verify the information that we have, and then they receive invitations to come to Cobo. And the invitations are in writing. The invitations give details about where they are sitting, what table, what color section they're in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, what time they should be there. And that's pretty much the process. We don't do big agency collects. We like the parents that come directly to us. We're trying to figure out, Sister Bell, I should call you Auntie Bell. We're trying to figure out what can we do as the next level.
Okay.
So that we can not just, Mrs. Bennett always wanted to do something more.
Exactly.
For the children. Is there some way we could connect them with mentoring agencies for those who are in need? Is there something we can do with them on an academic basis? And just before she died, she told me, she said, "Dennis, just take them somewhere." And so are there field trips that we can take them on? So we're still trying to think through what that is all about, because the North End Youth Improvement Council is 100% volunteer driven, and they currently operate Bennett Park.
Yes.
And by the way, we're excited about Bennett Park because it is being refurbished.
Wonderful.
And we'll probably be the only city park that actually has bathrooms.
Oh my! Tell everybody where Bennett Park is.
Bennett Park is on the north end. It's between Bobium and Brush, and around Smith and Bethune. I just happen to know where it is.
Yeah, I know that. I know where it is.
This is the first time somebody asked me where Bennett Park is. I just happen to know where it is.
I just know I go down the street and I get there.
Yeah. I just go there.
Not far from Loving Elementary School.
We're long ways from Loving.
Well, Loving, it's south of Loving.
Yes, it
Yes.
is south of Loving.
Yes.
Yes, but so that's where we are.
Okay.
And it's the only park that is privately maintained.
Oh, okay.
So the men of the North End actually maintain. They run the basketball programs. They run the recreational programs there. And Mrs. Bennett started a tradition that even today, if you went there, now I'm not encouraging anyone to do anything wrong, so I'm just going to put that on the record. But if you went, Mrs. Bennett, if you cussed in Bennett Park, you had to pay $2.
I love it.
And so there is a box in Bennett Park, even to this day, where kids, adults, primarily adults, put their $2 in there until the men of the North End are able to remove it. And I was just there maybe a week ago, and the box had money in it.
Is that right?
Now, can you imagine having a box
Sitting
in
in a
Detroit
park by itself.
by itself, because it's self-managed and self-patrolled?
But that's the beauty
of Dolores Bennett.
Bennett.
That she's the only one.
That's exactly
You
what
know,
that's
the only
exactly
one.
what
If
it
you
is.
go by the basketball court, that's where the cussing took place.
Yes.
If you go by the basketball court, there's a small little box there with a little hole in it, and oh yeah, you're gonna pay.
But that,
And they self-enforced it.
I'll be darned.
You know,
Isn't that
the players
incredible?
on the court self-enforced, and they still do it today. She's been with the Lord now 2 years, and they still operate on what they call Mama's Law.
That speaks to the respect and the love they had for her, and you could see it at her funeral and at her the night before at her family hour. You could see all those young people, particularly those young men who played on that basketball court, the respect they had for her because they were all there.
Mama Bennett.
That's it.
And you know, you're speaking of her funeral, the time when it brought me to tears. We drove down John R. And it was almost as if the president's body was going down because people had come out of their homes and they were standing on both sides of John R. You know, some of the men were saluting, some were waving, some of the kids were just had their hands over their heart. It was, in fact, this is an unplanned move. It was so moving that we ended up circling around Bennett Park. This was something that was totally unplanned. And when we got to Bennett Park was full because you could see kids and adults running to Bennett Park because they thought that we were going to allow her to have a last viewing there. So Mrs. Bennett is a Detroit saint.
Yes, she is. Yes, she is. It's just so many stories to talk about with Dolores. She was just and she was so down to earth. She was, and just a genuinely good-hearted, nice person.
Oh, absolutely.
And if she said something to you, she always said it in love. She might be fussing you out.
Right.
She would just fuss at you with it, but she was just saying it because she loved you.
Right. You know, at one of the adopted child programs, a fight broke out among the participants.
Oh, bad.
Miss Bennett went over there, and she grabbed, because she was, you know, she was a healthy sister.
Yes, she was.
And she grabbed that boy and threw him on the ground, and she said, "This is not going to happen here at Cobo Hall."
Not on my
and
watch.
that was it. Now, and we're not going to put you out, but we're not going to have this at Cobo Hall. Now go to your seats and sit down. We're not going to put you out, but go to your seats and sit down. And when you finish, come see Mama. After the show, after the program.
She was just quite incredible, quite incredible. We are just so blessed to have had her with us in our community.
Oh, absolutely. So blessed to have. I feel honored that she would have selected Carla and myself it took 2 souls, probably took 8 souls, but she picked 2 to replace her, and you cannot replace. So to serve as the co-chairpersons of Adopted Child, Carla Phelps, who was with DSC, Detroit Employment Solutions Committee or Council, whatever it's called, and then myself.
That is an honor.
It is an honor.
That is truly an honor.
And she put it in writing.
Did she?
She put it in writing in what she called her last will and testament. And, you know, even and her last will and testament had nothing to do with her worldly possessions. It was all about serving the kids of Detroit. And she said to the men of North End, "I expect every 4th of July for there to be a cookout. Please carry that tradition on at Bennett Park." And she gave instructions to her daughter. It was not about these possessions. This is what I would like for you to do.
Wow.
You know, and this is what I want my niece to do, or my granddaughter. And this is what I want, you know, she even put Detroit 300 in
Oh,
it.
my.
Because this is what I need. And she talked about how I need downtown to be safe.
Wow.
I need downtown to be safe for our children.
She was quite incredible.
Right.
Quite incredible. And I'm so glad you were willing to come over and on and talk about her, because these are stories that young people won't find in
Right.
history books, and other people won't find in history books, but they're Detroit history, Detroit legends, things that people need to know.
That's a book you should write, Detroit Legends.
Okay. We'll write it together. How's that?
My plate is full.
Oh, no, see? but you'll never find those stories and hear about the people in any book in a Detroit public school or any other school. But that's one of the things that WVTC is doing, is sharing information. Sharing information and educating our community about people that they may never hear about, or if they are 30 and under, don't know about, don't know the legends.
Even if you don't go as far as the folks who are politicians, et cetera, if you start just thinking about Detroit churches,
Yes,
you know, every one of our churches are full of saints.
yes.
People who, you know, I remember growing up at St. Paul AME Zion Church, and we had a Mrs. Stubblefield, and she made the best rolls on the planet.
On the planet.
On the planet. And I traveled this planet. There are very few countries that I have not been in. She made the best rolls on the planet, and have not been able to come close to my palate.
Oh my goodness.
And there was another guy who did homemade ice cream,
Oh my.
you know. But there are other saints like that, and within the church community that we don't know about. And even the story of those kids, I'm a former youth pastor,
Okay.
so we don't pass those stories on to our kids.
Exactly.
And so our kids think that they are the first generation of Christians in our nation, or in our church. They really do. They really do.
Yeah, they do.
And then,
They do.
you know, and then, so then but because we don't tie the circle together.
Exactly. We don't tell them from whence they came. And there's at my church, New Prospect, there's a Hattie Knox. Hattie Knox took care of all the children, no matter where. And up until the day she died last year, my daughters were part of her group. And everywhere my daughter went, whatever event my daughter was having, she knew Miss Knox was going to be there, and Miss Knox was there, no matter what it was.
And then at
Miss
your
Knox
church,
was
you had a
there.
youth pastor who, I can't think of his name now, but he ultimately had to have a kidney or a liver transplant. He was on your pastoral staff. But either way, he was a saint. He is a saint. He's still alive. And,
Yes.
and his
They
story
had me with
needs...
liver transplant.
Right, liver transplant. His story
And,
needs to be
his name
told.
is
He
escaping
worked-
me right
he
now,
worked
but liver
diligently
transplant, and he's
with-
still there working.
Work diligently with the young people in
Yes.
that community and that church. And it happens all across
Yes,
the nation.
he's still there, he's still
But
doing
who's
it.
telling the story of the Christians? You know. Now, if you go into the white circles, which I have a privilege of walking in, they tell the story of the white saints. They refer to, you know, whether martyrs or whatever the circumstances, but who tells the story of the black Christian?
WVTC is going to tell those
There
stories.
you go.
WVTC
So,
is
that's
going
why I
to tell
said
those
write the
stories.
book.
That's it. WVTC
Write
will tell
the
those
book,
stories.
because it is as a former youth pastor, I did it for 25 years. So there's a tremendous need.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But that's one of the things. This is the first one. Dolores Bennett is the first one.
There you go.
And we've got lots
One
more
of
to
many.
come. Not lots more to come. And there's so many of those come out of the church, but there's stories that don't necessarily come out of the church, but come out of the African American community that they'll never hear about
Right.
unless they lived it. Don Barton.
Absolutely.
They will never hear about Don
Absolutely.
Barton and know that he was the cable man. Before there was Comcast, there was
And,
Barton
you know,
Cable.
and I
They
had
were-
this conversation with a young person within the last 2 weeks, and they had no idea about Barton Cablevision,
Exactly.
you know. And so, and I know that Ken Coleman has been doing some work in this area,
Yes.
and he's been doing some phenomenal work in this
Yes.
area. But how do we get it into the hearts and minds of our
That's
children?
what we have to do, is get it to the children.
And so and since I'm on a Christian television
Yes.
and radio network,
Yes, yes.
I am going to go back to the story of Christians, because I believe believers need to know the stories of those who paved the way for them.
Absolutely.
You know, and I lived in the rich history. I went to St. Paul. I went to St. John CME, and now I'm at Rosedale Park Baptist. But I remember as a child, Reverend Audrey
Yes.
and
Yes.
the pastor of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church saying,
Yes.
our children have been out of school too long.
I remember that.
There was a teacher strike.
Yep.
And Audrey, and I wish I could pull his name up at Dexter Baptist, but they said, okay, we're going to have a meeting in our church.
Yes.
And you will not leave until the strike is over.
I remember that.
That you will not leave here
Until
the strike is over, because our children have been out of school too long. Those are stories that our children don't fully understand.
No.
The impact of the black church on the lives, you know, of this nation. So, and again, the youth work of Miss Knox and others across this country. There's a guy by the name of Daryl Anani, who happens to be white, but Daryl has been keeping the banner of he just stepped down, but he operates the only Christian school in the city of Detroit. And he primarily took students who were kicked out of other schools to come to Westside Christian Academy. So the list goes on and on and on. And I could think of, right off the top of my head, at least 500-600.
Okay.
You know.
Well, that'll take us into the next 20 years, and that's okay.
There you go.
We can do that. We've got programming forever.
We came on. I was brought here to talk about adopted child,
Well, that's all right.
I'm thankful for the opportunity to speak about, because there are the unsung heroes in our churches.
Absolutely.
And they don't get paid.
Nope.
They don't get
And
a dime. Matter of fact, they pay.
Yes, they pay.
They pay to serve.
Yes.
And particularly in the field of youth. I am thinking about writing a book, Why We Hate Our Children.
Really? Okay.
Yes, because when you think about our churches, be careful here.
That's all right.
Somebody might have to say amen from off the camera.
That's all right.
You know, the Bible says where your heart is, there also is your money. It doesn't say quite like that, but it says your finances, your treasures. And
We say it every Sunday at church. Where your treasure is, there will your heart be
right.
also. Yes.
But the truth of the matter is, probably less than 1% of your church's budget go to children. And yet children are the future. And so we look at why when we go to church on Sunday, so many children are absent, because we have not budgeted accordingly.
Okay.
And so we can go on and on and on. Since I had an opportunity to put that plug in,
I'm glad you did.
I'm going to do that.
I'm
because
glad you did.
I do it all
Absolutely.
across. I've done it all across the world.
I'm glad you
as
did.
God has opened up all kinds of doors for me. You know, all across the world, I try to champion the ideal of children and youth, particularly urban children and youth and black children and youth, because I see the struggles of those who are working with children.
Absolutely.
And those who are working with youth, and they're doing it on their dime.
They're doing
On
it
Social
on theirs.
Security
That's
check.
right. That's right. But isn't it amazing how God just makes a way for them to do it?
Mhm.
He just somehow makes a way,
Makes a way.
for it to happen. Before we finish, I've got this one thing I always do every Monday is I talk about the census.
Okay.
And as we're talking about children, it brings me to the census, is how important the census is to our children. And for those of you who don't want to fill the form out, who don't want to fill out online, who don't want to answer the information, it's important that you do, because of the children. Because it determines where schools are going to be built, where hospitals are going to be built, how roads are going to be handled. But more importantly, it talks about how these children are going to get health care and daycare and education. $1,800 per person will be lost for all of you who don't fill out that census form. $1,800 per year for the next 10 years. $18,000 per person. We can't afford to not fill the form out. We owe it to ourselves, but more importantly, we owe it to the babies to make sure they have all they need to succeed. So that's my census speech for today. I know you guys were waiting for me to say that. I have to say it every week. But it goes back to what Dennis was talking about, taking care of children. taking care of children. Filling out that form helps us do that. So don't be afraid to fill it out. Nobody's going to come knocking at the door for your child support. Nobody's going to come after you about your income tax. Nobody's going to come after you about parking tickets or anything else you have. The information is confidential. Don't be afraid to fill it out. Fill the form out so that we can take care of ourselves with that money and we get our portion of the money coming back to our community. Because that's what's happening. If we don't fill it out, the money's going to go to somebody else.
Let me just say this.
So come right on. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, you put your business out in the streets on social media.
All of
Why
it.
don't you fill out the form and
Exactly.
help your community?
Exactly. You tell them where you're going to be, what you ate,
How
who you
many
were with,
kids you
how many
got.
kids you have. You even take pictures of the meal you're eating.
Mm-hmm.
Fill the form out. I said, it's confidential. All it's going to do is help your community.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important to all of us, to make sure that the community is taken care of. Because you don't really recognize how important a few dollars can be. Those few dollars that you think are just little bitty money is a lot of money to some other folk. When you add all that up, be sure you fill that form out. Dennis, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
What a
much.
pleasure.
Any parting comments you'd like to make?
I thank you for the privilege and the opportunity, first to connect with Auntie, and then secondly to come on. Congratulations to the owners and operators of WVTC. I think that you are missionally driven. And there is a great need in our community to reach, teach, and to instruct our community. So thank you. And we need information. The other stations don't give us information. They give us music. They give us advertising. But they don't give us information. And our community will grow only when we become informationally driven. So
Absolutely.
the station that I'm affiliated with, we say we are edutainment.
Edutainment. I love it.
Edutainment.
I love it.
And then finally, for those who are interested in the Adopted Child Program, you can go to our website at neyc.com. You can donate, you can ask questions, you can look at our previous Adopted Child programs, and nothing else, because this is a Christian organization. Pray for us, that God would continue to use the dreams and aspirations of Mrs. Bennett far beyond her years.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That'll do it for us this wonderful Monday afternoon. We'll see you next Monday, 4 o'clock, same time, same place, WVTC Detroit. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Community Bell with your host, former Wayne County Commissioner Edna Bell. This broadcast was brought to you by WVTC Radio Detroit. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, our website, www.wvtcradio.com, or download our WVTC app from the Play Store for Android users and the App Store for iPhone users. If you've enjoyed this broadcast, tell a friend to tune in. We'll see you next Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern for the Community Bell Show, right here on WVTC Radio Detroit. WVTC Radio Detroit. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, our website, www.wvtcradio.com, or download our WVTC app from the Play Store for Android users and the App Store for iPhone users.